Literature gives us the opportunity to experience lives, perspectives, and worlds different from our own. Though remember, friend, a good story has many readings, and this is but one. You awake in darkness. The last thing you remember is exacting revenge on the man who'd imprisoned you for decades. But said revenge took the last of your strength, and now you're the weakest you've been in, well, forever. Your only hope is to recover 3 lost objects that are imbued with your power, but everyone who's involved in their theft is long dead, or worse. Oh man, what's an anthropomorphic personification of dreams to do? Well, that quest, and its subsequent fallout, fuels the story of Morpheus, Lord of Dreams, in the Neil Gaiman seminal horror comic, The Sandman. Hey, buddy, don't doze off on me, because this story is the stuff nightmares are made of, but, in a good way. So take another swig of your cappuccino, and Zoe and I will show you terror in a handful of dust. This episode is brought to you by you, our lovely patrons over at Patreon. To hear about all the sweet perks, including how you can vote on history topics that we cover, and about some cool new merch we got in the EC store, stay tuned until after the episode. So you haven't read The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. Oh man, are you in for a wild ride? I am so pumped. Sorry. Originally published in 75 issues from 1989 through 1996, the complete story has been republished in multiple forms since its original run. Gaiman's epic tale includes several different story arcs, as well as a dozen or so standalone stories. But of course, since we don't want to give you vertigo by whipping you through such an enormous tale in a very short time, we'll be focusing here on the first 8-issue story arc, collectively titled The Sandman, Preludes, and Nocturnes. Though it should also be noted that my exuberance and the overall wonderment of this work is also in no small part due to the fact that comic books are often a collaborative affair. And though we're focusing on Gaiman's writing, we also have to give credit to initial Sandman artists Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, Malcolm Jones III, and Dave McKean, whose visuals both help tell the story and set the tone of the entire run of the series. And also, since The Sandman occurs in the larger DC comic universe, we also ought to give a more general shout out to the many DC comic artists and writers whose characters inform, and often appear in, this work. And speaking of appearing in this work, I think it's about time we put you in it front and center. Oh man, are you excited? I'm excited. Did I mention that I was excited? I'm pretty excited. You are Dream, sometimes known as Morpheus, and you are one of a number of immortal beings called the Endless. You're responsible for all dreams everywhere, and you are ridiculously powerful. But you're also bound by certain rules, which means that when an English occultist named Roderick Burgess casts a spell that accidentally summons you, you get trapped. He and his followers then steal your tools, a helmet, a ruby, and a pouch of sand, and you're left prisoner to the Burgess family for 72 years. But before you fall into despair, you finally escape, albeit as a shell of your former self. In fact, you had invested way too much power into your tools, so your act of revenge on Burgess's son, a curse that leaves him eternally thinking he's waking up from a nightmare only to find himself in a new nightmare, uses up the last of your strength, and then you return to your realm to promptly black out. Fortunately, you're rescued by Cain and Abel. Yup, that Cain and Abel, but also the hosts of DC Comics' long-running horror series, House of Mysteries and House of Secrets, who also live in your dream realm. They help nurse you back to health and reveal that your realm, known as the Dreaming, has fallen into disarray since you've been gone. But you now desire to set things right, so you plot to reclaim your stolen tools and their respective power. First up, you summon the Hecate, a trio of women who serve as the Fates, Graces, and Furies in the DC universe, who are also bound by their own rules to answer one question each for you. And through them, you learn the locations of your belongings. 2 are on Earth, and 1 is in Hell. Yeah, better start with one of the Earth ones, don't you think? First up, the pouch, and your search for it leads you directly to occult detective John Constantine. Yup, that John Constantine. Turns out he bought it at a garage sale in San Francisco and would be only too happy to return it to you. Except it was stolen by one of his former girlfriends, so... While recovering it isn't especially difficult, the body horror and delirium that the dream pouch has inflicted on her and her housemates is not for the faint of heart. Then you head down to Hell, where you manage to win back your helmet from a demon. Though, through that process, you end up royally pissing off DC's version of Lucifer, which is an act that has huge ramifications for you later in the series. But that's future use problem. You're off to recover item number 3, the ruby. But when it's finally within your grasp, you find someone's been messing with it. It sucks a bunch of power out of your body and leaves you passed out again. But while you're sleeping off that rude shock, let's take a quick look at the bigger Sandman picture. In the DC Comics universe, the Sandman was originally a masked vigilante named Wesley Dodds, created in 1939 by Gardner Fox and Burt Kreistman. But then Gaiman was reportedly overjoyed when DC editor Karen Berger gave him free rein to create an all-new version of the classic character. This new iteration of the Sandman was based visually off a combination of Gaiman himself, Cure frontman Robert Smith, Bauhaus frontman Peter Murphy, ballet dancer Farrukh Ruzamadov, as well of course a bit from the original Golden Age Sandman. Gaiman's writing on Sandman was supported by his encyclopedic knowledge of mythology, literature, and history, gods and goddesses from multiple pantheons, Shakespearean players, and even Shakespeare himself, and characters from all manners of stories, both classic and original, populate the world of Dream. And while you, the reader, absolutely don't need to have Gaiman's breadth of knowledge to enjoy the Sandman, there are really endless delights to be had if you happen to be one of those readers who can make those connections. And speaking of connecting dots, there's also some amazing connections to be made from story arc to story arc. For example, many of these seemingly minor characters, introduced in Preludes and Nocturnes, become major players in the overall story. Furthermore, Dream's decades-long imprisonment leads him to a great deal of self-reflection, and he doesn't really like what he sees. So his ongoing attempts to repair his relationship with his family and friends forms much of the basis for the rest of the series. And speaking of that, you do have some stuff to set right on Earth right about now. You see, the person who messed with your magic ruby is a second-tier DC Comics villain, formerly named Dr. Destiny, but who now just goes by the name Dr. D. He altered the ruby via extensive experiments, which then caused it to reject you. And now, Dr. D is using the power of the ruby to wreak some gruesome destruction across the Earth, particularly in one diner. Yikes, that issue is something. So it's now your destiny to confront him and retrieve your power. You lure him to your own realm, and just as it seems like he has the upper hand, through a series of complexities, you're able to return to full power. And now, finally having achieved your quest to regain your tools, you feel disappointed. For a brief window, you felt like you had a purpose beyond your endless responsibilities, and now that you've achieved what you wanted, you're feeling kind of empty. Well, fortunately, your big sister, Death, comes to check up on you, and after accompanying her on a kind of bring your immortal little brother to work day, you have an epiphany about the importance of her work that gives you new purpose. Specifically, 67 further issues of new purpose. The Sandman remains one of the most highly praised and influential comic books of the last 50 years. And while hardly the first multi-issue comic that told a cohesive story, Gaiman's run on this title remains one of the most effective pieces of sequential art, and, in my opinion, one of the few pieces of media that absolutely stuck the ending. Oh man, I want to tell you so much about the rest of the series, but you should really read it for yourself and then come right back because I really want to talk about it. The characters, the writing, the references, everything will transport you to the wonderful, terrifying world of Dream. So what are you waiting for? Download the Diegesis of Dream without delay. Oh, would you look at that? D does stand for a lot of things, doesn't it? Actually, I made a list, like donuts and dapper and didgeridoos, and don't forget to thank all of our lovely patrons over on Patreon, whose generosity makes each and every one of our shows possible. And going off script real quick, just seriously, thank you. We could not do this without your support, and it means the absolute world to us. And if you'd like to join our Patreon community, not only would you be helping us create the content that you love, but you'll also have options like suggesting and voting on extra history topics that turn into actual episodes, which I'm still floored by all of your suggestions. They're so awesome to read every time we do the poll. You get access to our lovely official Discord, where it's just wholesome as heck and lots of great discussions happen. You get to view all of our shows early and snag some exclusive things like 4K wallpapers and some never-before-seen digital posters. Side note, shout out to the artists on those. Actually, shout out to the artists all the time. They're killing it on everything we do, including this ad read, so please give them tons of props in the comments. Where was I? Oh, right. We really pride ourselves on trying to make sure your generosity is rewarded, so please go check out the tiers and see if any of that tickles your fancy. And actually, speaking of fancy tickling, that came out wrong. It sounded better in my head. We'll fix it in post. Zoe, please insert a smooth transition of me talking about our new merch in the EC store. Exactly, bud. And since you just yes-anded me so perfectly there, I'd like to show off this amazing new shirt showing off you enjoying all of the topics we cover in Extra Credits. It is adorable, and I love the fact that my cat is a beautiful history, mythology, literature, and game design loving nerd now on all the clothing I can wear. Not to mention, we also do monthly pin votes, again, voted by the patrons, so you can snazz up a blazer or a backpack or a collar. And actually, the whole store itself just got a glow up. We got tons of stuff there we don't really talk about much. Plushies of Game and Zoe, other shirts, posters, coffee mug with Game's face on it. I'm actually drinking coffee out of one of those objects right now. I'll let you guess which one. So whether you'd like to help forge the future of Extra History on Patreon, want to join a awesome community, or just want some sweet swag that, again, I am so freaking proud of, please consider supporting our channel by visiting one or both of the links below. We would very much appreciate it. And if you've made it to this point of this ad read for ourselves, I don't know, I feel like you might be the kind of person who would enjoy all the sweet perks that comes along with that stuff. So please check it out. And if you do, dare I say you'll be joining the fantabulous ranks of the following folks: Skylar Holmes, Joseph Lame, Dominic Valenciana, Casey Musja, Arclight Games, Angela Valenciana, and Ahmed Ziad Turk are fantastic patrons, and we thank them so much.